Clark, and I teach for various programs here on Capitol Hill, including University of Mississippi and Michigan State University, which are my main jobs. And first off, I want to thank WISH, Washington Intern Student Housing, and Dan Lewis, and Sarah, and Lauren, and everybody else who basically made this happen. We think career development obviously is important. We know you are very focused on your career futures, and I know your parents are too. And so we try to use these career nights as an opportunity to share some ideas and to hear from people who have been in your place just a few short years ago and who may have some ideas about best practices, about tricks that they use to get jobs, opportunities that they were able to take advantage of. Career development is not a science. It's an art form, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. And so our goal here tonight is to just give you, hopefully, a range of ideas, new ways of thinking about where you're at and hopefully where you're going. We had another panelist who works for IBM who could not make it tonight. She's ill, so we're going to cut her some slack, and she's going to join us the next time. I want to just say a few things to kind of get the program started, to put some ideas on the table, and then we'll turn it over to our panelists who are going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to some question and answer, which is usually the best part of the program, because I think we want to hear what's on your mind and field some questions. And then finally, hopefully we're going to leave a few minutes for some networking, this thing we keep hearing about in DC, mingling and networking. Which we welcome you to come and talk to any of the panelists, or even talk amongst yourselves if you haven't met each other before. An exciting thing for me in working with students is that I realize this is a big investment for you to come to Washington, D.C. It costs more money, you're taking yourself away from your home campus, you're making sacrifices, but at the same time it's really a great set of people that we get to work with, because you're kind of the self-motivators. You could easily be sitting back on your home campus, watching basketball and hanging out, but instead you decided to stretch yourself a little bit and to put yourself out there in ways that, hopefully are beyond your comfort level a little bit. So we really like this group because again, you're not the typical college student. You've made that investment. What we want to try to do is to get to thinking about collectively how you can make more of your investment. You're here in DC. Most of you are halfway, at least, through your internship. You're taking your classes, you're putting together your academic side, you're applying some of your academics, you're getting experience in the workplace. The question is, what do you want to do in the remaining weeks that you're here? You need to be thinking about a little bit more about what are the takeaways from your experience here in DC. And I know a lot of you have written down your goals, and if you haven't set your goals completely on paper yet, I suggest you really think carefully about what it is you want to take away from this program. What are the takeaways? It could be gaining a mentor or two. It could be building your network. It could be compiling a portfolio of your workplace artifacts, examples that employers can see of things that you've done really well. So you definitely want to be thinking about that. The other thing that I'm sensing in doing career events with various universities is that I'm sensing, and it's for obvious reasons, people are much more apprehensive about the job market. Obviously, with the unemployment figures, with the economy kind of slowly coming back, it's a concern for everybody, right? I mean, I think part of what we all share is we want to have a fulfilling job. We want to have a livable wage. We want to own a house someday. Maybe you want to, have a family, and you're considering, you want to think about your kids someday being able to go to college and have productive lives. Well, that's been kind of called into question a little bit, especially for your generation relative to some of the generations that have come before you. So you really, part of what I think is important is really thinking about what kind of lifestyle do you want to have over the next few years. And there's kind of your early career, then there's mid-career, and there's late career. And for you, you don't have kids, you're not tied down by other obligations, maybe that some of us who are a little bit older have. You know, maybe travel is something that you value and that you want to pursue in the short term. Maybe you want to build up to higher level career positions, but that means kind of paying your dues and moving up the ladder and living in, you know, rental, apartments with, 5 other people, which is what a lot of people behind me have had to do here in DC. Also, the labor market is in flux. While, for example, statistics show that the unemployment rate for college graduates is still pretty low, I think it's around 5%, 6%. Statistics also show that about 40% or higher of college graduates who are getting jobs that don't require 4-year college training. And we're hearing a little bit about this now in the back and forth between candidate Santorum and the Obama administration. But the fact is, there are thousands and thousands of other college students who are graduating alongside of you, and there are thousands and thousands of college students who have graduated over the last couple years who are not being fully utilized in terms of their academic training and their 4-year college degree. So the competition is fierce. And employers are now in the driver's seat. It's not like when you apply for jobs, like in the old days, you would get a nice letter or an email saying, thank you for applying, we'll get back to you if we want to interview you. Now you hear nothing. I mean, a lot of times you think, well, you're applying for these jobs, but there's really not a job there. So it just adds to the uncertainty, and so I'm hoping that we can put this all in perspective and hopefully gain some further ideas and strategies for how we move forward. There is a concept called career competency, and these days you have to work on your career competency. It's just survival of the fittest, especially for people like you who are just going to be entering the job market full time. There's a saying, success is a combination of preparation and luck. Okay? Preparation and luck. The preparation part, you're doing a lot of that right now. Okay? You're getting those workplace skills. You are networking. You're trying out different career fields. So the preparation part is going. But luck is something you also have to push a little bit forward as well. Good things can happen to you, but you have to be ready to take advantage of good things. You have to be open to the idea that maybe something's good is proposed to you. It's not quite what you thought you wanted. Maybe you wanted to go to law school or you wanted to work in Congress. That didn't come up, but maybe there's somebody else here in DC who's saying, well, I think we might have a position opening up, or we can turn your internship, which is now unpaid, into a paid fellowship, and we can employ you for the next 3 or 4 months. And so part of maneuvering through these challenging economic and labor market times is being open to maybe opportunities that you hadn't considered, but that could turn out to be actually excellent for you. Part of career competency is also understanding yourself and who you are and what drives you. And, in a way, we're all driven by the need to make a living. So obviously salary, right, and pay for, our hard work in getting through college and through, taking on student loans, pay is obviously a primary goal and a primary value that we have. But you also want to be thinking about what are some other things that that drive you and that you feel are important. It could be issues that you're passionate about. It could be human rights or the environment. It could be certain types of things that you do in the work world. Some of you may have tried your hand at developing websites and found out, actually, I'm pretty good, and people seek me out for that skill, and it's kind of rewarding. Others, I've had students who ended up having to do grant writing, and they say, Professor Clark, I don't want to do grant writing for a living. But at the same time, they're gaining a skill, a fundamental skill that it's what we call a transformable skill or a transferable skill. If you can write grants, or if you've done a little bit of event planning, or if you know a little bit of HTML and you help people build their websites, these are skills that you can take to other places. And hopefully at some point those will link up with your passions and with your values. Okay, but if you're thinking, well, I really want to travel for a living and I'm not going to settle for anything less, that's great, but you have to convince employers that you've got what it takes and that what they need so that they will send you out so that you can pursue your passion. And so a lot of it is just these kind of fundamental skills that maybe you like, maybe you don't like so much, but that you can put on your resume. So you need to think, you know, carefully about that. Also, you're in internships now, and again, I suspect most people are halfway through, maybe a little bit more than halfway through. You need to kind of assess where you're at in the internship, and part of what I think some of the folks behind me can talk about is how do you take it to the next level, right? You've mastered your basic duties, right? Some of them aren't so great. Who wants to be on the phones 4 hours a day? Or maybe you're just getting so sick and tired of dealing with the mail or taking people on tours or whatever it is. But at the same time, you need to be thinking about how can you take it to the next level? How can you begin to get exposure to longer term projects, or getting to work with some people maybe that you've wanted to work for in the office, or maybe your contract says you're supposed to be getting that kind of exposure and it hasn't happened yet. Okay? So there's these stages of the internship that people typically go through. And one of those stages is letdown. Okay, and not for, you know, everybody, but a lot of students in the first few weeks of their internship feel it's kind of a letdown. You know, you get to DC, you think you're going to be doing all this, you know, great work, you've invested a lot, and basically you're doing a lot of the same mundane tasks that you could be doing back in your hometown or, you know, in your college town. And so that's typical, but the issue becomes, what are some ideas that we can share that maybe then you can begin to build on that and to develop some of the other options that your office might have to offer. And many of you have intern you know, directors or coordinators or whoever who are supposed to be working on your behalf, and they're very good at tactfully checking in on your internship and seeing how things are going. But if you're not telling people, communicating about what you want to do, or where you want to go with this thing, then they can't help you. So communication is very important. Professional, tactical communication, okay? Also, think about how you're doing in the internship, and most of you are going to have a final evaluation for your internship. So you're going to be evaluated by your supervisors. And you want to leave the internship on a high note. You want your supervisors and your employers to be pleased with your work. Hopefully you're going to get a letter of recommendation or an opportunity later if you need a reference from that workplace that you're going to get it. And I've dealt with a lot of students who have, you know, I get their internship review forms, and I can tell you students typically don't get tripped up on the technical stuff. They do their jobs, but what they tend to get tripped up on are things like attitude. And even students that are really great and doing well and everything else, there will be a little glitch on that review, and it'll say, does it take criticism very well, or, you know, does it respond favorably to constructive feedback? Okay, so you got to watch it. You got to maintain that attitude, right? Even if somebody's telling you, you know, you did okay, but you could do this better. You got to watch. You don't want to get defensive, okay, because that's the kind of thing that they notice. So it's not your GPA, it's not your skills, it's more your fit in the organization and your attitude. Or if you go into the workplace saying, you know, I didn't work for, you know, 4 years in college and pay all this money to be doing photocopying, okay? I mean, I'll do it, but I'm not happy about it. That kind of attitude, you know, it gets noticed and wears on your supervisors quite a lot, because a lot of times they're having to do the photocopying too at times. We all do it. And so they may not take that very well. So watch your attitude. Try to stay upbeat, stay energetic, stay positive. Also, another kind of item that tends to get checked more often than not is your ability to multitask. Okay? And we know you have a basic set of duties that you're supposed to be fulfilling every day. and you're working up to some projects. Maybe you're working on a couple of longer-term projects. But sometimes your boss will come in and say, okay, drop everything. You know, we need you to go to the other side of the hill. We need you to take some papers over there. Or we're going to divert you for a day and a half to help us get ready for the conference. And if you do the old eye roll, right, or you just kind of feel like, you know, you convey this sense that, well, I'm doing this and I'm comfortable with this. Again, that's an attitude that you can sabotage yourself. So I just wanted to put that out there. Attitude, multitasking, communication are very important for you to succeed where you're at right now. Finally, I've asked our great panel to basically weigh in on a number of different items. Obviously, we want to talk about, again, how you can make the most of the time you're still here. We want you to also think about how you can keep the momentum going after you leave DC. And you know, how you keep these contacts going, how you generate all your hard work into further success wherever you're going. Okay, so they're prepared to do that. So let me go ahead and introduce our panel now, and I'll turn it over to them because they have the real information here. And Dawn, that's good. You put yourself in the anchor spot. That's kind of a tradition. Dawn is our anchor man, as always.
Purely coincidence.
Purely coincidence. We have here Angela Werderman, who is an MSU, Michigan State alum, who went through I was actually her instructor at some point. And she was a criminal justice major. And her internship was with the U.S. Marshal Service in D.C. And she is currently at Sayers and Associates, where she serves in 2 positions as Special Security Officer and Business Management Assistant. And she served in a prior position of that where she did background checks, but that's super secret, so we can't really talk about that. But she seems to be happy where she's at. So, Angela, we're glad to have you. Next to Angela, we have Adrian Walker, also Michigan State University alum. And Adrian, while he was in the program here in DC, interned at Emily's List in the political division. And he is currently in the Washington office of Senator Debbie Stabenow, and is her executive assistant and kind of the go-to guy in the office. And we're glad to have you, Adrian. Thank you for coming again. Over here in the other ornate side of the room, we have Bradley Ballou from North Carolina. In fact, is a graduate of UNC Wilmington. Kind of nice little beach town, right, Bradley?
Very nice.
And Bradley actually and I worked together with the old University of North Carolina and Washington program. So he lived over in the Congressional Building for a couple of years and was my right-hand guy. And we put out all kinds of fires, and it was really fun. Bradley, during his time with University of North Carolina and Washington, also got his master's in political management at George Washington University, and then went on to intern in the office of Senator Elizabeth Dole, and then was hired as a full-time staffer in that office, and ended up being kind of a chauffeur, right, for a while for the Doles.
I was your driver for about a year and a half.
Senator's driver and dog walker and all kinds of good stuff. Unfortunately, Senator Dole lost her bid for re-election, and so Bradley found himself looking for other types of employment, and has since landed in a really nice job as Director of Federal Governmental Relations for the University of North Carolina. And when I say the University of North Carolina, I mean the whole system, which is, what, 15 campuses?
17.
17 now. See, wow, that shows how much it's changed. They've added a couple of campuses. So Bradley, it's great to have you back as well. And then finally we have Dawn Owens, who is currently Communications Director with the Strengthen Social Security Campaign. And Dawn has a long resume, including waiter at Clara's Seafood Grill. So I'm not going to go through everything, but he does have some noteworthy positions. And if I had my glasses on, I could read them better. But he was Communications Consultant, Policy Advisor for the Center for Teaching Quality. He was a press secretary in the U.S. House of Representatives office Representative Bob Etheridge from North Carolina. Director of Public Affairs at the National Association of the Education of Young Children. He worked for the Teamsters and various other positions. He's just been appointed to the board of the DC Southeast Children's Fund. So he's going to be raising some money, right, for children in the Anacostia and the Congressional Heights area. And he's a graduate of Elon University in North Carolina. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Angela. If you're ready, Angela. Okay.
All right, so as he said, I'm Angela Werdeman. I'm a graduate of Michigan State University. I was in the spring of 2010 internship program, so I did the DC internship program with Professor Clark. I was a criminal justice major, specialization in security management. When I was here, as he said, I don't want to repeat too much of what he said, but I interned with the U.S. Marshals in their Judicial Security and Intel division. And then after that, I received my job offer prior to graduating. My first job was doing background investigations for people getting government clearances, and that was with the United States Investigation Services. I did that for a little bit over a year, and then I got my current job as Sayers and Associates, and that's to train to take over as their facility security officer. So that entails people's personnel clearances, the visit authorizations, all that falls under that department, and then also in their business development management assistant. So I guess based off of that, I'd be happy to talk to any of you that have questions regarding if you are going into the law enforcement or intelligence, that area specifically, because I had some experiences with the federal interview process as well as contract, the pros and cons to both. But more so that I'd like to speak now about that applies to everyone is your internship itself and how you make that somewhat of a value, how you stand out in that process. I was fortunate to have an internship where I was with a very good division and very nice people. But with that said, I was an intern, someone was there before me, someone was there taking my place after. And so there's just kind of ways that you have to try and make yourself stand out. And that starts with very simple things that you may not think you're even being watched on before you're even going to get a task. And those are simple things such as showing up. Even if you think, maybe you're the first one that's supposed to be there, and you go, oh, no one's there. I can be 15 minutes late.